Good morning, everybody, and welcome to BARBRI SQE Prep webinar on the Solicitors Qualifying Examination. I hope you can all hear and see me. There is a chat box where you can put comments in, so any issues then just drop us a note in there. That's also where you need to put any questions. For this particular webinar, the audience is muted. You'll only be able to hear me for the duration of the webinar, but we're very, very happy to address any questions you may have. So as the webinar goes along, please feel free to drop any questions into the chat box or at the end when I finish talking and when the slides are finished. We've got plenty of time at the end for a Q&A, so please do bring us your questions. That's what we're here for. By way of introduction, my name is Victoria Cromwell and I'm Director of UK Programmes at BARBRI. I'm a solicitor by training. My background is I qualified a while ago now at Addleshaw Goddard and then spent most of my practicing career at Linklaters in the city and in the restructuring team, which is part of the banking department. After my fee earning days, I was a professional support lawyer at Freshfields, Brookhouse, Derringer. And then I went into teaching and taught law at BPP and Kaplan before moving to BARBRI, where I started off my career at BARBRI as the subject matter expert for contract law and business law for the Qualified Lawyers Transfer Scheme, the QLTS, which is a course that we're already running and have been doing for a number of years. And I'm now in charge of developing the SQE prep courses that we are going to deliver, and we'll start in January 2021, which is something I'm going to tell you a little bit more about later on. So before we get into what BARBRI's courses are and what we can help you with, let's go back to the basics of what is the SQE, because there's been a lot of talk about the SQE and the SRA's information has come out gradually over time, so it's been quite hard to keep track of what's exactly the position. It's pretty much formalised now, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about all the details. So the Solicitors Qualifying Exam replaces the current route to the qualification. So historically we had the LPC if you were a law graduate, GDL followed by the LPC if you were a non-law graduate, and the Qualified Lawyers Transfer Scheme if you were a qualified overseas lawyer who wanted to re-qualify into England and Wales. And that's all going with a bit of a transition period, but for all intents and purposes, the main route to qualifying from next year, from September 2021, is the SQE. The SQE is a different type of exam to the LPC. Rather than it being an exam set by each of the course providers, it's a centralised exam. So it's administered by Kaplan on behalf of the regulator of the solicitors profession in England and Wales, and that's the SRA. So everybody, regardless of where you train, where you do your prep, or whatever your route into the profession, will sit exactly the same national centralised exam. It's a two-part exam. You have to have passed part one before you can progress on to part two. The first part is a multiple choice set of questions, and the second part is a legal skills assessment. And as I've already mentioned, it's not just something that you can do if you have a law degree or have done a law conversion course. This is an exam route into the profession that's open to anybody, regardless of your background, provided that you have a degree or equivalent. The equivalent could be a foreign qualifying degree, or it could be an apprenticeship route, or that kind of thing. There's lots of information on the SRA website about what a degree or equivalent is. So to qualify from September 2021, you need to have passed SQE1, SQE2, have a degree or equivalent, and have done qualifying work experience, which we'll come on and talk about a little bit later. And as I mentioned, this is from the end of next year. From September, the new rules change, and the first stage one exam is in November 2021. The new part of qualification, as I mentioned, you need to do SQE1 stage 1 and SQE1 stage 2, and then qualifying work experience, which is 2 years training. It's replacing the traditional training contract route. and it's much more flexible. That's the best thing to say about qualifying work experience. It can be made up of experience in places other than law firms, such as paralegaling, systems advice bureau work. It could be work you've undertaken in your degree in a law clinic, provided it's signed off by a qualified lawyer, and it's no more than 4 different settings across those 2 years, then that would be enough to count as your qualifying work experience to qualify. And also, as it says on the slide, you need to have fulfilled the Law Society and the SRA's character and suitability requirements, so that's not usually an issue. So let's talk a little bit about the first stage, the SQE1 exam. As I mentioned, it's multiple choice questions, and what the SRA are aiming to test here is your functioning legal knowledge. So it's a test of how you apply the law you have learned, the substantive and procedural law, to a particular scenario, and that's exactly how the questions will be set to you. So there'll be a scenario that you need to read, and you need to work out what particular area of law you're being asked about. Then there will be a question, and then you'll be given 5 possible answers. And this is no mean feat, because it's a 360 question exam. It'll be spread over 2 days, so 180 on each day. And if you look at the time available to answer each question, it works out at about 1.7 minutes, so just over 1.5 minutes to have worked out which area of law you're being asked to answer a question on, read the scenario, looked at the question, then picked your best answer from the 5 usually very plausible answers that you will be given. So it's a test of the ability to assimilate a large amount of legal knowledge in a short space of time, and to accurately apply that knowledge to a particular scenario to demonstrate your functioning legal knowledge. So it's something that you need to be very well prepared for. The subjects tested, you can see on this next slide. This is a really good example of how the SQE1 exam is different from the LPC or the GDL, because, or even in fact a traditional LLB law degree, because it encompasses a bit of everything really. So in a law degree, you usually follow the conventional subjects, the foundational subjects, but you wouldn't really be examined on any procedural law, whereas the LPC, that's where that bit comes in. Whereas SQE1, you're going to do a little bit of both. You'll see your test on business law, but also business practice. The same is true for dispute resolution, civil and criminal litigation, and as well as knowing land law, you need to know property practice, that kind of thing. So SQE1 spans the knowledge really from a law degree and the LPC. And as you can see from the bottom of the slide, as well as all those subjects, ethics and professional conduct are pervasive, so you could be tested on that in any of the contexts above. And also one that's not on the slide is taxation. Taxation is assessed in SQE1 in the context of business law, property practice, and wills and administration of estates. So you have to have a working understanding of taxation as well. In terms of SQE2, as I mentioned earlier on, SQE2 is a skills assessment, and this is the type of thing you'd be most used to seeing on an LPC syllabus. It's not something normally that is covered by a law degree. However, for SQE2, the level you're tested at is that of a newly qualified solicitor. So whilst the LPC used to test you at trainee level, this is a higher bar, and that's because they're assuming that you have experienced some or all of your qualifying work experience before you do the SQE2 exam. You have to have passed SQE1 before you can move on to SQE2, and you will be assessed across the skills of client interviewing and advocacy, which are face-to-face in front of an assessor, case and matter analysis, legal research, legal writing and legal drafting, which are all written skills. So again, this is quite an involved exam. It's over 2 days, and you have, I think it's 10 separate assessments, 10 or 12. But it's something, again, not to be underestimated in terms of preparing for it. So, having done a whistle-stop tour of what the SQE is, then we're moving on to now whether it's a path you as an individual based on your circumstances should take. And as I mentioned before, there is a transitional period. So at the moment, there are certain categories of individuals who could actually choose whether to go down the old route and do a GDL, an LPC and a training contract, or could choose to go to SQE, and then there's those who will have to take this new route. We have devised on our website a handy calculator to help you work that out. So if you scan the QR code that's on the screen at the moment, that will take you to our website, and you can enter your specific circumstances into the SQE calculator, and the calculator will tell you whether you should take the old route, you have to take the new route, or whether you can choose and what the different routes might look like for you. If the QR code, for whatever reason, doesn't work, or is, the phone's not working, whatever, if you go onto barbri.com/SQE, there's a drop-down option for the SQE calculator, so you can find it there as well. So in terms of which route you should take, LPC versus SQE, it's quite a specific personal choice. The SQE calculator will obviously help you with that. Some of the advantages of waiting and taking the SQE route I've already mentioned, in that you have a bit more flexibility around qualifying work experience. It's always traditionally been a bit of a bottleneck for those who sat the LPC and are looking to get a training contract. There's way more candidates than there are training contracts available, as I'm sure many of you are well aware. And so what the SQE does is opens that up to more students who want to qualify, because you can do it in a much more flexible way. The fact that you can do the SQE in 2 stages means that from a cost perspective you can spread the load, and actually BARBRI offers instalment plans for our courses, which helps even more. And the other benefit of having it over 2 durations is you can do the prep alongside work commitments, other family commitments, so you can earn while you learn and you can spread it out. And it all makes that, well, it hopefully makes that bottleneck go away, but it also makes it more affordable. And that was one of the SRA's aims when the SQE was brought in, to make the profession more inclusive and more available to those who money might have been a barrier to entry into the profession before. So hopefully SQE should help with that. So I'm going to talk about BARBRI now. We've talked about SQE in general, but we have spent the last 18 months developing our prep courses to enable students to successfully sit the SQE. We have courses that are designed for anybody, irrespective of your entry into the profession. So you could be a law graduate, a non-law graduate, you could be a foreign qualified lawyer, as I mentioned, and it's particularly our courses are particularly aimed at those who want to study in a much more flexible way than you would perhaps have been used to seeing in courses for the LPC. Our courses are developed and have been developed over 50 years of experience. We have been devising and writing prep courses for the US bar exams for over 50 years. And as I mentioned at the start, most recently we have been preparing foreign qualified lawyers for the Qualified Lawyers Transfer Scheme. And we have therefore got a huge bank of knowledge and learning science that we can put into our courses. And that has translated really, really well into the UK market, as our successes on the QLTS have shown. We have pass rates that are way above the published pass rates that were there before we entered the market. So we are coming into the SQE prep market with a really solid foundation of experience of taking students through these types of exams. On our prep courses, you're going to get a personal study plan, which we call the PSP. That is your online learning management system, effectively. It's where your key substantive learning is housed. It's accessible 24 hours a day. You can go and review your lectures anytime you need to. And it's backed up with something called ISAC, which stands for the Intuitive Study Assistant and Coach. And ISAC is an algorithm that means that each SQE prep course is personal to an individual learner. Isaac flexes around you depending upon your strengths and weaknesses in the course and the progress you're making through the course. So it adapts to keep pace with you or to allow you more time to assimilate your knowledge in particular subjects. And it will recognise where you are doing well and also where you might need to do a little bit more work. On top of the Isaac algorithms and the flexibility of that, we give every one of our students a one-to-one personal study mentor. And your mentor is there for you for the duration of your course, for study support, help and advice. All of our courses are written with the support of the best law tutors and lecturers in the country for the specific subjects. We handpick them based on their experience. So you will be giving instruction. You will be being given instruction from the experts in that particular field. We also got our subject matter experts to write our SQE Prep workbooks from scratch. They are bespoke for this course. This is a very specific type of exam, so it requires a very specific type of learning. So using textbooks that were designed for other courses is not appropriate. So we have bespoke workbooks which our students receive on their PSP, but also they receive in hard copy if you prefer to learn that way. As well as all the substantive law through the lectures, we have workshops, and they are available face-to-face, subject to obviously the global circumstances that we find ourselves in, but also as online webinars. And they are not designed substantive and learn on the PS, help you with the softer skills to support your learning in this type of course. So we will do webinars to help you get the best out of your learning materials. We will do webinars on mindfulness, well-being, resilience, and how to systematic problem solve, so how to answer multiple choice questions, because that's where BARBRI's key expertise lies from the QLTS and from the US Bar. So those workshops will be peppered throughout your course, with also the opportunity to have drop-in sessions with our tutors and our mentors as well. In terms of the details, so as I mentioned, the SQE1 exams start next year, and we are offering 3 types of courses to prepare for that exam, and they are different by way of duration. It's the same course with the same materials, the same structure in terms of the workshops and your mentor. It just depends on your entry point into the course, which one you might feel is most appropriate for you. So starting in January, we have a 40-week course, which is best for non-law graduates who just need a little bit more time to understand and work through the material. If you're working full-time and you're a law graduate, you might feel that this is a good option as well. And it's also a good option for those who don't perhaps have English as a first language or have come from a point where they are foreign qualified. It's around 10 to 12 hours per week, so it's very manageable alongside a full-time job. We're then going to offer a 20-week course from June, which is about 20 hours a week, so it's, as you can see, roughly double, and that is aimed primarily at law graduates, but perhaps those who've been out of the profession, been out of studying for a little while and just need a little bit more time and refreshing of knowledge to get to the position they need to be in for November. And our final course starts in August, and that is a very intensive 10-week course. That is a minimum of 35 hours of work a week. So it's not something you can do if you're new to law, and it's not something you're going to be able to do alongside work or other commitments. So as it says on the slide, it's best for recent law graduates from the UK university. Our SQE1 prep courses are £2,999, and as I mentioned, there are instalment options, and we also have scholarships available. We have all of the details of that on our website, and there's another QR code here which will take you to our enrolment form if you're interested in finding out more about enrolling. We are currently enrolling now with an early bird discount, so if you enroll until the 30th of November for our course starting in January, you'll receive £450 off the £2,999 fees. And that was all I wanted to say in terms of the SQE exam itself, BARBRI's prep courses, and why BARBRI would be a very good choice in terms of our experience and history and understanding of this type of exam. You can see that we have on the final slide all of our social media, so please do go and follow us. We do regular updates, we do blogs, we share updates from the SRA, that kind of thing. So we'd love it if you'd follow us on social media. And as I hope we've now got loads of time for questions, so I'm going to hand over to my colleague Naima, who's going to have a look at the chat panel and then reading out the questions that you've all put in. So thank you very much for joining today, for your attention, and hopefully it has been useful. But please, if you have any questions, let us know. Thank you.
Brilliant. So we've got quite a couple of questions. The first one, it's great to see BARBRI releasing this course to prep for the SQE, but there doesn't appear to be any tangible information on how the exam can be booked through CAP. Is something that you can shed some light on, Victoria?
Yes, so the SRA and CAPLAN haven't been the quickest, I think it's fair to say, in terms of updating their websites and the information and feeding all of that practical information down to potential students. There is a little delay based on the fact that the Legal Services Board approval is due at the end of this year. So I suspect once that has been given, that is the point at which the SRA and CAPLAN will release details of how to book and the procedure and the real nuts and bolts of the mechanics of the exam, you know, whether it's 2 consecutive days for SQE1, how long the sittings are, where the test centres are. But based on our experiences from QLTS, it's a computer-based exam, so it will be sat in Pearson VUE test centres if they use the same model. They are all over the UK, but also there's many test centres overseas, and my understanding from the SRA is that candidates will be able to sit SQE1 internationally. The bookings for QLTS open as the last exam has finished, so that doesn't really help us for SQE, but my guess is that from the new year onwards we'll have more details of the exam booking procedure. I hope that answered your question.
Great. I hope that answered your question, Matthew. Brilliant. So the next question, is there any benefits for a foreign qualified lawyer with work experience of 2 years sitting for the SQE?
If you're a foreign qualified lawyer, you still have time to do the qualified lawyers transfer scheme, but it is being phased out. So from next September, there will be no more opportunities to sit the multiple choice test. So you have 2 more options for that, January and July next year. And then there will be a year's transition period for the skills part of the QLTS, which is the objective structured clinical examination. Taking the QLTS at the moment is a benefit to a foreign qualified lawyer because the SRA haven't finalised their advice yet on whether foreign qualified lawyers will need qualifying work experience, and they don't under the QLTS. It's a bit more certain. All indications are that for SQE you would need to show that you had 2 years experience, but something I found out recently is that that experience needs to be still, like domestic candidates, signed off by a solicitor. So it's a little bit more of a difficult hurdle potentially because of that. There's also the potential before admission for those who are exempt from certain parts of it to have to do an English language test. And again, there's not full details about that from the SRA. So I think SQE for foreign qualified lawyers will be fine. I think your experience is likely to count. But if you have any concerns, I would suggest it's worthwhile doing the QLTS while you can. And what the SRA have recently said is that if you don't get an opportunity to sit the OSCE because of there's a lot of pressure on the places because of the COVID-19 situation, then you'd be able to take SQE2 instead, but it would still consider you as having qualified under the QLTS regime. It is complicated, the qualified lawyer's position, so I would recommend that if you have any further questions that you get in touch with me or one of my colleagues in our sales team, because we're all very well versed in advising foreign qualified lawyers which is the best route for them to take depending upon their particular circumstances.
Brilliant. The next question, does work experience as an advisor at a Citizens Advice Bureau during your degree count towards work experience, or must it be done after your SQE exams?
That's a really good question, and actually the answer is very helpful. Qualifying work experience can be done at any time, and you could be accruing it now. It just needs to be documented and signed off by a solicitor. So my advice to anybody who wants to start building that portfolio of qualifying work experience is to go and speak to somebody within your organisation who is a qualified solicitor and just confirm with them that they'd be willing to sign off your experience and to show that you've been given the opportunity to experience the competencies that the SRA require. Because you don't want to get to the end of the placement and ask them and then the answer to be no for whatever reason, or that they don't think they've had enough visibility of you. If you talk to them straight away now, then you can start building up that relationship and working out what it is that you need to be showing them and providing and that kind of thing. But yes, in answer to your question, it doesn't have to be after SQE. You can be doing it before or during even.
Brilliant. Is there a recommended way as to how you can come to compile your work experience? I'm assuming that this can be done with an in-house legal team?
Yes, so there's not a recommended way. The the SRA have left it very open to interpretation, to individuals to take responsibility for demonstrating that they've had the opportunity to experience these competencies. I think that more on qualifying work experience is going to come out. The SRA have had their attention pretty much exclusively on the SQE1 and the SQE2 assessment spec, which has now been done. So I suspect in the coming months we'll have lots more clarity on qualifying work experience. Sorry, Naima, what was the rest of the question?
The rest of the question is, I'm assuming that this can be done with an in-house legal team? I'm guessing they work.
Yes. Yeah. As long as you can have your experience signed off by a solicitor, because in-house, if it's in practice, it doesn't make any difference, that's fine. Just to be clear, there's a list on the SRA website of what counts. I think it's a non-exhaustive list, so if there's anything you're not sure about, I probably wouldn't know. It would be best to get in touch with the SRA and ask them directly. If it's not on that list, I wouldn't know.
Brilliant. The next question is about Regulation 3.12, which is not in force yet, but do you know, Victoria, if in-house such exemptions can be obtained?
I don't know off the top of my head what Regulation 3.1.2 is. I'd have to go and have a look at that. Was it, sorry, in-house exemptions?
If you hold a qualification recognised under... Yeah, so it's if you hold a qualification recognised under Regulation 3.1, the SRA is satisfied that your qualifications or experience demonstrates that you meet some or all of the prescribed competencies.
So,
so the SRA may decide that you are not required.
Yeah, this is the exemptions for foreign qualified candidates. The answer to that is I don't know yet how easy it will be to be able to show that. You'd have to demonstrate that your qualification in your home jurisdiction was the equivalent. It's more about equivalency. It would need to be equivalent to the SQE. My gut feeling on this is that it will be very difficult to show that. As things stand on the QLTS, we are candidates who from the EU and the EEA area are able to have exemptions, but it's very difficult to do. And having spoken to many students, they tend to not bother and then to just go through the QLTS exam in full, particularly if you're a lawyer from a civil law jurisdiction. showing any kind of equivalency with the UK examination process as a common law jurisdiction would be almost impossible. There are going to be jurisdictions where it's going to be more straightforward, such as Commonwealth countries, for example. But again, the information around this is quite scant. We haven't got any case studies or experience yet, obviously, through SQE as to what will count, what wouldn't count, what might be classed as an exemption. I think the SRA are intending to do a country-by-country guide. That's something I read somewhere, but that hasn't happened yet. They haven't got to that point.
Brilliant. Can lawyers from other jurisdictions sign off on the 2 years of training, for example, from the US or in Luxembourg?
Well, this is the point I made earlier, which was a new development. This isn't on the SRA's website anywhere, but there was a webinar recently, and what the SRA said on that webinar was that overseas experience could count, but it would need to be signed off by a solicitor. So my understanding of that is they mean a solicitor in England and Wales. And I don't know any more than that, I'm afraid. That's the latest bit of information from the SRA.
This question is directed at our course. So how will BARBRI teach the second stage of the SQE?
So the skills assessment, in the same way that BARBRI teaches all of our courses primarily online, the S32 course will be the same. So there will be materials on our learning management system, your PSP, to help you understand what you're being asked to learn and to demonstrate in terms of the skills. So we'll be benchmarking the skills against the SRA's assessment criteria. The best way to teach skills is to actually do them. All the substantive law should hopefully have been covered in S31. We'll do a gateway assessment just to make sure that the law element is up to scratch, because you get tested on 50% law and 50% skills. So we wouldn't allow you to progress through the course until your legal knowledge is at the right level. But from that point on, there will be lots of opportunities to experience advocacy, interviewing, legal writing, research, drafting, case and matter analysis in the context in which you might be assessed in. We will have webinars on our learning management system that will talk you through what a good version of a drafting exercise should look like, how to do a good advocacy performance, that kind of thing. But pretty much then it's over to you. There'll be a lot of self-review with exemplar feedback. But the main part of our course is the one-to-one opportunities you get with your tutor to practice the skills. So every week from a certain point in the course, you have a scheduled exercise. And depending on the skill, you either do them face-to-face or online, depending on the circumstances. Or you submit them if they were written skills. And your tutor, who goes through the whole course with you, would give you immediate feedback if it was the interviewing or advocacy, followed by more substantive written feedback. And then in the case of the written skills, your one-to-one tutor would give you personalised feedback on your written skills. And then the course ends with full simulated mock assessments, and then they are usually, under normal circumstances, held face-to-face to give you as good an experience of what the exam might be. Our last set of the OSCE exams for the QLCS, unfortunately, because of the COVID pandemic, were held remotely, but we hope that by November next year, when S3 comes in, and actually SQE2 doesn't come in until the following April 2022, that we might, across the world, be in a different situation and we'd be able to invite our students to do a face-to-face mock assessment.
Brilliant. Can your qualifying work experience be carried out at one organisation if currently working full-time as a legal professional?
Yes, absolutely. So in the same way that you used to stay in one organisation for a training contract under the old LPC route, you could do the same for a qualifying work experience, as long as it's signed off by a solicitor and you've been given the opportunity to experience the competencies the SRA requires for legal practice. So it could be one setting, it could be two, it could be three, but a maximum of 4.
Brilliant. Would you say that the 40-week course is the only one suitable for someone who's also working, however much work experience you have?
I think that's something you as an individual need to consider based on how much time you want to study per week, as well as a full-time job, and actually how full-time your job is, because a 9-to-5 job is very different from somebody who's working perhaps already in a law firm and in a pressurised city firm with long hours and deals going into the night. Your opportunity to study will be limited if you're that type of person. So I would base it on the amount of study required per week to make that decision. We are saying it's 20 hours. So if you think you can devote 20 hours outside of work, then it's feasible that you could take that course, and particularly if you've got a lot of experience and you've got recently fresh legal knowledge, it might be that you can move through the materials quicker. That 20 hours is a guideline. Obviously, every student will be different. Some will go through the materials quicker and some will go through them slower. But beyond that, it's down to your particular view of your background and abilities, and also ability to spend time and study material on a weekly basis.
Great. Can the fees be paid in euros?
Oh, that's a really good question, so I should know the answer to. I'm going to say yes, because I'm pretty sure that's right. But if you drop us an email, we would be very happy to confirm that. But I think the answer is yes.
Do you know what the pass rate is for the exams?
No, we don't. That is something the SRA haven't confirmed yet. My understanding is that the pass mark won't be fixed. It will be determined by the particular cohort that is sitting the exam, in much the same way as the QLTS. So the QLTS pass rate fluctuates by a couple of percent every year. It's around 60%, between 57 and 60 usually. I suspect is all we've got at the moment, that the SQ might be the same, but we have no information from the SRA about that at the moment.
And if you can't sit the SQE1 in November 2021, when is the next slot?
The next one is May 2022. So at the moment, the SRA are offering both SQE1 and SQE2 twice a year in the spring and the autumn.
Great. With regard to SQE1, the preparation course, how often will Barbary be running this? I'm minded to wait 6 to 12 months to get more experience and a chance to study.
So we'll do the 3 courses that I mentioned leading into each exam. We are lucky because of the type of organisation that we are, but we're not wedded to an academic year. So rather than do a September to June academic year type course, we start with when the exam is and then we work backwards, because actually with this type of exam, which is a final test of everything, you're asked to assimilate an enormous amount of knowledge. You don't want to have any gap between finishing your prep and sitting the exam. So for November next year, we'll have January, July and August, but they all finish just before November. And then we'll do the same thing for the second sitting of SQ1. We'll have 3 lengths of prep course running back from May, 10, 20 or 40 weeks. I can't off the top of my head work out what that is, but so there'll be between now and the May 2022 exam, you'd have 6 possible Barbary prep courses you could choose from for SQ1.
Great. And when will the scholarship forms be released?
We just launched the courses about 2 weeks ago, so the information is just gradually being put onto our website. The scholarships, something you apply for on the enrolment form. We're doing one that's merit-based, but also one which is a blog. and it's How Can One Lawyer Change the World is the title for that one. So I would recommend, because there's lots of different options, that candidates go and look on our website. And if you're not able to find it yet, then sign up for our alerts, put your details in, and then you'll receive updates as soon as they are on the website. We'll be launching the scholarships very, very soon. So if you subscribe to our social media and also to updates on the website, you'll get blog posts and emails promoting that kind of thing as well.
Great. And has the Legal Services Board accepted the SQE yet? What are the implications if they reject it?
The Legal Services Board haven't given final approval yet, but they have done so in principle, and also the Law Society's board has approved it. Sorry, the SRA's board has approved it, and the Law Society has not objected to it. So there's very strong evidence that the Legal Services Board will finalise their approval towards the end of this year. It's taken them a little bit longer because it's an important decision. They're allowed to take up to 90 days, and they've taken that full amount. So we're expecting to know, I would guess, around November.
Great. So if I pass the SQE, but I have no other experience in law and I don't have a law degree, how difficult will it be to secure any qualifying work experience?
That's a very difficult one to say, because this is a whole new world for everybody, both for students and universities in terms of preparation, but also for law firms. There is an argument, which is probably what you're referring to, that the bottleneck I talked about, the SQE just is shifting it from the point of taking the training, a training contract, to the point of qualification, and I don't think we know is the answer. If you have valid, relevant experience, you have good academics, and your degree has equipped you with the skills that the firms you're applying for want to see, so analytical thinking, problem solving, the ability to be articulate in the written and spoken word, being commercially aware, all the kind of things that law firms would be looking for from their candidates on assessment days, then I'm hopeful that that will stand you in good stead, irrespective of not having had any experience. The SQE exam, if you can pass it, is the legal knowledge that you need to be fit for practice according to the SRA. So it shouldn't be a barrier to you entering the profession, irrespective of work experience, not, because that's what the point of qualifying work experience is to give you that.
Great. Also, with a scholarship, would it be possible to get an early bird discount as well?
No, we don't combine early bird discounts and scholarships, unfortunately. It would be one or the other.
And can you get student finance for the BARBRI courses?
Well, there isn't really any student finance left, and that is one of the big problems for students taking SQE. But as I said earlier, because this is in 2 stages, it makes it much more financially viable. There's going to be a natural gap between SQE1 and SQE2. It's also worth bearing in mind that even if there was some way of financing your course, I understand some providers might wrap it up in a master's or something like that, that doesn't cover the exam fees, whilst the LPC used to wrap it all up into one, because it was the provider who set the exams. The SRA, as the regulator, and the Kaplan, who are administering the exam, are completely separate from all the course providers. It's a national regulated exam, so your course exam fees would be payable directly to Kaplan. Our fees, as I mentioned before, you can pay them in instalments. So we have different instalment options for the different lengths of courses, but as an example, for the 40-week course, we would ask for a £199 deposit, and then there's monthly instalments of about £350. So that makes the course much more affordable particularly for those who are working alongside it.
Great. I'm on my university's Innocence project. Would this be able to count as qualifying work experience?
I'm afraid I don't know what that is. If it's work experience from a law clinic or equivalent to that, the SRA have said that it will. But again, it's just that benchmark of making sure you can have that experience signed off by a solicitor. That is what they're looking for. So if you're in any doubt, I'd speak to your university. They would have looked into this undoubtedly. And if you're not sure, even after speaking to your university, I would speak to the SRA directly. They have contact details and you can ask them questions like that.
And what are the price of each of the exams?
Right, off the top of my head, I can't remember, but they come in together at about £4,500. They're weighted more heavily towards SQE2, which is not surprising because that's the exam where they will be assessing you in front of face-to-face examiners, whereas SQE1 is computer-based, so it's much, much cheaper. I think it's about 1.5 and 3, something like that. It's all on the SRA website, and we're very happy to provide those details. I just can't remember the exact amount. It's a very specific amount as well, but we can give you that information if you drop us an email after this.
Mm-hmm. So the SQE is quite an experiment. Is there going to be any template list of questions that can be expected in SQE 1 and 2?
There already is actually for SQE1. So if you go onto the SRA's SQE website, there's a list of sample multiple choice questions for SQE1. The last time I looked, SQE2 wasn't up there, but I have to say I haven't looked in probably the last week, so they may well be there too. But again, as the rest of the year goes on, we're going to get loads more information put up on the SRA website, but the multiple choice questions are already there.
So how would a qualified lawyer who is supervising your work report the supervision, and what would they need to report?
We haven't been given any details about that by the SRA. The information on qualifying work experience is very much, it's up to you to show your competencies. So it's not the case of confirming your abilities, it's showing that you've had the opportunity to have experienced the competencies. The SRA have a statement of solicitor competence. It's those competencies that the person is signing off that you've had the opportunity to do. What that form takes, the SRA are not prepared at this stage to dictate that. They say it's up to the individual and the institution. They are going to, I remember from a webinar a few months ago, give students the opportunity to have an online portfolio, I believe, but that's, again, last time I looked, that wasn't up and running yet. So qualifying work experience is still a little bit up in the air.
Are you exempt from SQE1 if you've already completed your LPC?
I think that's right. I'd have to check that. I just question why you take SQE if you've done an LPC. If you've done the LPC, you don't have to do SQ. You just need to get a training contract. If it's to avoid the need for a training contract, then I'm fairly sure you can just do SQE2 and then you can do qualifying work experience. I know that's right, isn't it? Yeah, great.
Yes, yeah, so absolutely. You are exempt from SQE1 when you do the LPC, and then it's just a matter of doing SQE2 and doing the qualifying work experience, yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. What are the competencies that the qualified lawyer or solicitor needs to actually sign off on?
Oh, there's a really long list. My advice to you would be to go and look at the SRA website. It's things about, it's not substantive law because that's all dealt with in the exam. It's more about the skills, so being able to communicate, written skills, that kind of thing. But there's a really long list of them. So my advice to you would be to go on the SRA website and just type in Statement of Solicitor Competencies. If you can't find it, please get in touch. I'll send you it. But it's too long a list to go through on a webinar like this. We've only got a few minutes left. Apologies for that.
And once you've passed the SQE1, how long is it valid for until you have to take SQE2?
You've got 6 years to do both exams.
And what if you don't have access to a solicitor but only a local qualified lawyer who can qualify your work?
This is really into specifics now. The information I heard from the SRA was brand new last week on their webinar, that a solicitor, i.e. a solicitor in England and Wales, would need to sign off your experience. If that is the case, then it's not going to be sufficient that it's a local solicitor. I don't know any more than that, because that's what the SRA have most recently told us. Again, I would advise anyone who has concerns about this to contact the SRA directly and ask if local sign-off will be acceptable.
Will there be any in-person workshops at all?
For BARBRI's courses, yes. So for all 3 course durations, we're doing a series of workshops which we're calling Prep for Success. And as I mentioned, these are more around the skills of undertaking this type of exam and looking after yourself, so, you know, well-being and stuff like that. Exam prep in terms of systematic problem solving, that kind of thing. And we will, subject to demand, do them face-to-face in the classroom, but not at the moment, as obviously because of the circumstances we find ourselves in. Hopefully by November next year, things will be different, but I don't think from January, when we start our 40-week course, we'll be in a position to, in any shape or form, be offering face-to-face classes.
Brilliant. Do the placements have to be any length of time, or providing you can demonstrate you have met the competencies through the work you are carrying out in your role, will it be acceptable?
They can be any length. I think for the reasons that you mentioned, there's going to be a duration which is by necessity needed to demonstrate that you've had the opportunities. If you had the maximum of 4 settings, I mean, realistically, you couldn't do less than about 4 months in each setting, because otherwise you wouldn't have made that 2-year portfolio of experience if you add them all up. So there's no guidance on the duration. I think it's just down to what a solicitor will be prepared to sign off. I don't think they would be comfortable signing off 2 weeks, for example, but they might be comfortable signing off 3 months.
Is there anywhere you can find what legal resources that you will need, i.e. the books for the SQE exam?
There aren't any books for the SQE exam. It's administered centrally by the SRA and by Kaplan, so there are no set texts. It's up to the individual to find the best way for themselves to prepare for the exam. I think not using any preparation or any books would be difficult. I think that using the books that you perhaps use for an academic law degree would also be difficult. It's not an exam where you're going to be examined on the history of the law and legal principles going back through a point of law. It's not where you start talking about jurisprudence or the fundamentals of dissenting judgments. This is, what is the law? How do you apply it? So it's a very exam-focused type of learning that you need for SQE, and a good prep provider will give you the books that do that. So that's what we will provide for the BARBRI course. We have bespoke books that teach you just what you need to know to pass the exam. LPC textbooks rebranded aren't going to do that, because they don't have enough of the substantive legal knowledge. Law degree books are going to go too far on the substantive legal knowledge, but not enough on the procedural stuff, which the LPC picks up. So my advice would be, obviously, I'm going to say to you that Barbary is the one to go for, but whichever prep course provider you decide, you need to make sure that the materials you're being given are tailored to this particular exam, that they're not LPC and GDL materials, they're not QLTS materials. This is a very specific exam that needs very specific preparation, so just make sure that the materials you use to prepare for it are fit for purpose.
Great. And will your next 40-week course start in June 2021?
Probably. I'm just trying to count back 40 weeks from May 2022. Yes, it's going to be around.
I would think maybe end of July, early August.
Yeah, it depends. The trouble is we don't know when the exams are yet, because if they're at the beginning of the month, it would obviously push that 40 weeks back, but at the end of the month it would start a bit later. So approximately summer next year, we will be launching the 40-week course for the second SQ1 sitting.
Great. And is there any risk that the Legal Exam Board won't sign off on the final proposal and that the exam schedule will be completely delayed?
It's no guarantee, but my understanding is that it's more of a rubber stamping exercise, provided that they're satisfied with the work that's been done to date. It could get pushed back. I think it would be detrimental to students, the uncertainty. I think it would be detrimental to the profession, who are all now thinking very, very deeply about how they recruit and how they take on trainees under the new regime. Everyone has been working to November 2021 if there was any more delay, because there already has been a delay. If those of you who recall, it was supposed to have been implemented this year. I think further delay would be highly detrimental to the profession, to universities trying to put SQ Prep into their courses, which need a certain amount of lead-in time, and I think also to the law firms as well, who are changing all their recruitment processes to take SQE into account.
Great. And sorry if I missed this, but when does SQE2 course start?
SQE2 would be December 2021 to prepare for the first exam in April 2022.
Great. And when will enrolment for the QLTS for the July 2021 start? What are the requirements, if any, for a scholarship?
There's no scholarships for QLTS. For SQE, the scholarships will be on our website, as I've mentioned already. And in terms of enrolment for the July 2021 exam, if you want to prepare over 6 months, that course will start in January 2021. So we will be taking enrolments from now really up until the course starts. We also do a 3-month prep course, so you can enrol for that a little bit later, and that would start with March, April time next year.
Great. Is there a risk that there could be more candidates than the exam spaces, or do you anticipate that Kaplan will be able to meet the demand?
I think for SQ1 there will be enough space because it's computer-based and it can be sat in multiple locations. It's not going to be a problem. The real test will be SQE2, and Kaplan have learned lots of lessons from the OSCE part of QLTS, so I'm hopeful that they will take this into account when working out how much capacity they're going to offer, which they'll know based hopefully on the number of SQ1 students they have. So there'll be a way of them having a rough idea of what their capacity should be. So I think it will be okay, but we will have to wait and see. I think that's probably it, Naima. We've got 45 seconds, 30 seconds to go before the time runs out on the webinar. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. Some really great questions. Hopefully I've answered them as best I can, but if you've got any follow-up questions or any information you would need from us, you can just drop us a line on our social media, or you can email us. and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.